Hi, I'm Andre from the Mega 65 team, and you're listening to the Scene World podcast.
Hi, this is AJ, and Joerg is over there. That means you're listening to the Scene World podcast. What's up?
Yeah. Hi.
Hi.
So, we are talking today to
Gavin Graham. He's a Bitpop musician, former scene musician. He's been around for quite a while, and we'll be exploring some of what he's doing in a bit. Before that, though, we have some news to hit. I'll let you start with that.
Well, recently, as the Mark II from the C64 Reloaded is out from Jens Schoenfeld individual computers, a lot of people are actually discussing on Facebook why a lot of people from UK on eBay are selling MK2 C64s and saying that's not the one from Jens Schoenfeld. Yes, that's a different thing, because the MK2 is actually the name the UK people use for the Z64C or Z64-2 from 86. That has nothing to do with the Mark II, the second rendition from the Z64 Reloaded that Jens Schoenfeld is selling since December. So that's a totally different thing here.
Have you gotten a Mark II Reloaded?
Yes, I'm still waiting for the last final ships in the post.
Okay.
Cool. Yes. Yeah.
Then you have the Mark I as well, don't you?
Yes, and this one has the SID-FX.
Yeah.
Yeah, inside.
There you go.
And I've got the Ultimate Swing SID, and I actually was told today by Matte that there will be more of them coming soon.
Okay,
so,
cool.
That's pretty good. Yes. So a lot of SID replacements lately, you know.
Oh yeah.
I mean, on eBay there is somebody selling, nano swing SIDs, you know, and now this is.
And I think that the newer swing SIDs, the Ultimate Swing SID or some version of the Swing SID actually does the paddle inputs and the mouse inputs correctly, from what I gather.
Yes. So if you look at the manual from the Ultimate Swing SID, it says the difference between the original Swing SID and this one is actually this one has paddle support and mouse support.
Right. Yeah, and there's also the FPGA SID, which we've talked about in the last 16 podcasts, I feel like. But that's coming out. It's an FPGA-based SID, which will let
in
you
March.
Which will let you have two. There's actually two SIDs on one chip, so that's kind of also like a dual SID solution, which I've put down. You know that I'm interested. I'll get one when it comes out. I'll throw that in my 128 because I've got a SID-FX in my 64. So.
Well, I've actually had today my Ultimate Swing SID in the post because I got a software update for it for Fred Cray tunes, and I have to say I switched it with the software configuring program to the 6581 SID. And I was really impressed. I was listening to Shakes the Street, which is the first course on Turbo Outrun from Jeruntel, and it sounded really very well. Pretty close to the 6581. I know. It's not, I shouldn't say it's very close or 100%. It's not, but it's a very good replacement. You know, if you listen to the original Swing SID, or if you listen to the DTV SID that has no filters at all, you are really impressed to hear such a big difference between the original 6581 and the Ultimate Swing SID running on the 6581 mode. So you would say really recognize the difference between the old and the new models much more than you would at SID emulation, for example. You know,
right?
In most software emulation, you don't hear so much of a difference. if you listen to certain tunes that use a lot of filters. So I always use Shakes the Streets from Turbo Outlaw as reference because it has a weird SID setting. Filter usage. So yes. Other news is I finally received my Street Fighter 2 Anniversary Edition from
Konami?
Yeah, from 8-bit, and it's actually pretty decent.
Yeah.
It actually has a history section in the manual, so it's not too bad. I'm really impressed by the quality of it. Of course, it wasn't cheap, so it should be good. And also, they have something like a legacy cartridge club that you can join.
Ooh.
So I sent off that registering postcard. So just like in the old days, you would do it online, you would send a postcard, and then you would be a club member.
Yep.
So I'm waiting for answer on that. Hopefully that works and it's not getting lost. This is a time where things tend to get lost or take a long while. And I also received Zem's Journey on a physical cartridge today.
Nice. Excellent.
I'm impressed. So really very good.
I got the digital download of it because I'm too impatient to wait for physical media. And I've got an NTSC system, but I have the RU, so I can actually, play it. And I really wanted to try it out, and it's really good. It's a really good game for on the 64. I haven't gotten past really like the second level because I suck at games. But
me too. But I passed level 4 or something, stage 4, and
I have very very short attention span with games. It's like I started, and it's also like
Me too.
Yeah.
I know. That is why you told me at the extra live gaming day. You said you should play a game longer than like 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and not switching so often.
But it gets, it might be interesting for people to watch a long play, but it gets so boring. I want to do something different so quickly.
I know. So I'm also constantly switching games. Yes. Anyway, this one is really good because not only the technical side, but also you don't lose your lives.
Yes,
you can always respawn and restore, and this is totally cool for people that suck at jump and runs like myself. Because I always miss a jump at some place.
I'm better, I find, with the thing that really annoys me with it is that jump and runs platform games with a joystick are crap. Like, it doesn't translate to joystick well. A pad like Nintendo or Sega or something, that makes it so much easier to do because your brain, for me anyway, my brain automatically goes to Super Mario Brothers, and you're using, it's kind of like default controls that every game sort of followed after that. But with the 64, most of the time you're using a joystick, and
you can get official gamepads for it.
Well, I've got a Genesis controller that I've got an adapter that lets you plug it into the 64, but I haven't
we discussed it a lot, many times. Don't try to trash your C64.
Yeah.
It's not like in the old days. Get another one.
Well, I've got the 64C, which I think has the protection against that sort of thing, so it's not that big of a risk. But still I don't want to take a chance. It's older.
We all remember your Trill story.
Yeah. So I've been seeing a lot of posts online and all over that the Mega 65 retro computer is undergoing a lot of stuff lately. There's a lot of news coming out with that. They're getting further and further along with it. They're getting ready to produce some demo units to send out some places. Almost daily, there's new updates regarding the programming and the retro engineering of it from Paul Gardner Stephen, who we had on here back in, I don't know when. Twice, I think we had them on.
Twice, yeah.
So that's getting closer and closer. The price of this when it comes out, from what I see, is not going to be cheap. But, I mean, it's, it's the sort of thing where you can kind of almost justify it because it's not It's not something that's going to be a lot of. It's not like, you're replacing a machine that there are millions of or something where you can charge bare minimum for it because everyone's got a C64, but no one has a C65. So, and to
Some
go through, some people do, and they go for $17,000 on eBay. So if you're paying $2 for a reproduction, that's pretty good.
Right.
That's what I saw for price-wise anyway, about $2,000. Yeah. I don't know if that's American or Australian dollars, but
well, that's just for the models. They will they will sell to people that collect and have the cash.
Right. And that'll be the whole thing with the case and the keys and everything built in. It's not going to be like, because this is going to be an open system, remember, from talking to them, that anyone will be able to build their own if they really want to. So So if you want to get it from them and have the full working thing with the mold, the plastic case and the custom key set and all that junk, that's going to be a bit. But yeah, everything all together, it's getting first half of 2018. They'll be making 20 machines to send out to software developers, C65 engineers, community implementers, and journalists of retro magazines. Scene World.
Yeah.
My address is P.O. Box.
I should ask. I believe.
Yes, we should totally have one.
But are they selling it or are they sending out for free?
From what I gathered, they were dedicated to key stakeholders in the community, which would be software developers, engineers, community influencers, and journalists of retro magazines. So, we can make a review. We can take a look at it.
Let me ask Andre.
Yes, you should tell him, "Hi, Andre. This is Joerg. You should totally send AJ a Mega 65."
Well, I guess they would rather send it to me because it's coming from Germany.
Yeah,
but anyway,
but see, well then you can send it to me because because I know how to code the stuff, so I can look at it and be like, "Okay, this is cool."
I don't know. We will see.
We can just send it back and forth. We'll send it to everybody in Scene World, and we'll all sign it, and then we'll auction it off at the end.
And then we all meet at one place and have a big party.
Yeah, party at your house.
Other news.
Yes.
Good question. Have any?
We'll just keep a really long, quiet pause. We'll just breathe.
Well, I mean, we spoke a lot about the news.
Breathe loudly into the microphone for about 45 minutes and then just pop over to the interview.
Sam, I'm your father.
Yeah. Hey, did you see the new Star Wars?
Of course.
What'd you think?
Awesome.
Really?
Yes.
I felt like I was confused by some of the choices they made.
Okay.
See, because here's the deal, right? All you want to do is see all this time. They made such a big deal in the last movie about Luke Skywalker. And all the other movies were basically all about leading up to Luke Skywalker. All I want to do is see Luke Skywalker kick some ass. And he didn't. He didn't leave the fucking island.
Well, he did.
No, he didn't.
But he did not in physical presence. He did.
But he didn't even kick ass then. All he did was move out of the way. He didn't fight. He didn't do anything. Kylo Ren swung at him. He ducked. That was it. That's all he did.
But he died at the end.
Yeah, exactly. For no reason. Why'd they have to kill him off?
Because he was exhausted by the amount of force he had to use.
Right, but it's like we never got to see him kick any ass. It was just sort of like he was on an island, and now he shows up briefly, and now he's dead, and there's no more. We're not going to get to see Luke Skywalker fight.
Okay, I see your point. Obi-Wan Kenobi in the first Star Wars, so to see, 1977. He was really an old guy, but he kicked ass, and he died
exactly.
During that.
At least we got to see him fight Darth Vader.
Yeah.
And he sacrificed himself for a noble purpose to save the other guys. And he wasn't intending, Darth Vader even said, escape is not his plan. He wasn't planning to get off the Death Star. He was going there to help out, and that was it. But Luke, there were plenty of opportunities for him to turn around and do something good. At least, do something. But he wasn't even there. He didn't even sacrifice himself for, like, if he had gone out there and had a showdown with Kylo Ren and been struck down, that would have been something. Because at least then he's sacrificing himself for the greater good. He never left the island. He sent a picture of himself to there to face off with Kylo Ren, and he didn't even, he didn't even swing a lightsaber. He stood there, and then Kylo swung at him and he ducked, and then he did it again, and that was it.
And then he died.
Other things, they spent the last movie and the year in between, or 2 years in between, building up who's Snoke. Who is Snoke? Who could he be? What's Snoke's history? This movie dies.
Anyway, Master Yoda was back.
That was nice. Puppet Yoda. I like that.
And he burned off the chamber of Jedi Masters.
Yeah, he burned the great Jedi library. Although, he didn't really, because the books are in the Millennium Falcon. Because you see that at the end when Finn goes to get something out of a drawer, and they're all in the drawer. That's why he says to Luke that library doesn't contain anything that the girl doesn't already have, because she took the books before she left. So it's not.
I didn't get that part.
Yeah,
okay,
yeah. Cool. He opens the drawer and you see the books floating around in there. So and
Yoda knew that the books were already removed.
Yeah. Well, this intro derailed.
Well, we will cut out the Star Wars stuff, I guess. But the rest, I guess, is quite extensive. I mean, we spoke about Ultimate, about the... yes, I forgot one news.
Yes.
That I received today. There's version 1.1 released of Friend App.
Oh, yeah. Friend Up. That's the Amiga-like operating system. I think isn't it like a cloud-based operating system?
Yes, exactly. And this 1.1 release was put on GitHub like 5 hours ago.
Yeah. It's the second major release of the platform, aggregating a huge bunch of fixes and improvements.
Yup. So
there's instructions how to get to that and how to install it and all at github.com/friendsoftwarelab/friendup. Links to all this in the description below.
Yup.
So that's about it for the news, I guess.
Yep.
So Gavin Graham is waiting over there. Let's go over and talk to him about some Bitpop and some stuff.
Yeah, let's pop it.
So we are talking to Gavin Graham. He is a former demoscener. Actually, I don't know, but you may be a current demoscener.
Not current, no. Former.
Okay. And you're about to say that?
But actually, you wrote to us because you're doing Bitpop nowadays.
Yes. That's right. So, just a little bit of the backstory. Former demoscener. Mm-hmm. Started with Commodore 64, like most here. That was the computer to have. And then progressed on to the Amiga. But back on the C64, while most of my mates were just playing games like Ghostbusters and stuff like that on it, I was doing machine code with a few other people who were, just nerds, complete nerds like myself, and more interested in just gaming. You wanted to try and exploit the hardware as much as you could in that fantastic era where analog met digital, so there's these ways where you could exploit machinery that you just can't do now. So me and a few others were reading the data sheets to the chips to even look into as far as how capacitors charge and discharge and the timing of that, so you can send pulses, binary pulses basically at the right time to fool those capacitors basically to recharge again or whatever, and that lets you open up side borders and all that. The typical story that we all know about the tricks that you pull on the Commodore 64 as a programmer. But while I did some of that, I was more interested in music back then, even, and wrote quite a few pieces of music. Some of it made it into crack intros and stuff like that. One thing that I wish I kept, and I didn't keep this, I actually had a letter from Charles Deenan, one half of Maniacs of Noise. He asked me to send him a few demo samples, a demo disc of my music, because it was actually part of a potential recruitment into Maniacs of Noise. But I just lacked so much confidence in myself and my own music, I didn't actually even bother to send him anything. And then later on I lost the letter too. A lot of the music that I wrote back then, I've lost too. I actually know where some of it is, on some aging floppy disks that I just can't access. Someone else has got them. But some of my stuff's on CSDB as well. Unfortunately, the ones that are on CSDB are some of my earlier ones that I consider a bit crappier than some of the other stuff that I can't find, Because I'm not a trained musician. I was just listening to Rob Hubbard and Martin Galway and all those, and getting my musical clues and ideas from them. I actually got a lot of my inspiration from David Whittaker, who I consider to be... Look, I'm going to be pretty blunt about this. I think compared to all the musicians that we know and revere and idolise on the C64, he was more quantity than quality, I would say, is the polite way to put it. But hey, I'm not knocking him at all. That's not slurring his name, because you think forward to Shadow of the Beast, Amiga, and that music that he provided there, I think, was a turning point in the gaming industry, So his mark in computer music history is just undeniable. However, he was a machine, and he just pumped out music, and a lot of it sounded the same, because he was doing it quantity over quality. However, he had a particular style to his music that I did enjoy, and I was trying to replicate his style more than anyone else's. I started with my own music driver. However, the first iteration of that came from an idea I saw. I think it was in Zap64. I saw an article. Anthony Crowther from Alligator Games provided a music driver and this little basic program that you could use that would semi-compile your music data into just a binary that sits with the music driver and then just plays back. I wasn't so much interested in his music driver, but I was using his little basic program to do data entry, to get my music data in. But I did take some ideas out of his music driver that he provided to make my first version of it too. But it was pretty limited, that was back 1983 or 84, and just to make a rattly snare sound or something like that, a snare drum sound, you just oscillate a noise wave, but not do anything that was like a wavetable type snare sound that came later on. That Rob Hubbard, I think he might have been the first, I can't remember the exact history there, but he might have been the first to do the wavetable type of stuff. Yeah, I think he was actually, but it was almost like hard-coded wavetable, because I remember like a lot of other people were doing, were just assembling other people's code. That didn't have to be a sound driver, just trying to figure out how to do other visual effects out of the VIC chip. Were all reverse engineering pretty much everyone else's code, and denying it. No, I wasn't doing that. I was with the idea myself, But behind the scenes, we're all having a peek at what everyone else was doing technically, sort of thing. And then I was just, kept on looking at Rob Hubbard's sound driver and used that as a model to improve mine, because I tell you what, that guy's code was... Can I swear? Is that allowable?
Sure.
Or should I keep... Well, Rob Hubbard's sound driver code was fucking tight, man. I mean, there was no JSRs that take extra clock cycles. It was all one big. It was like how you think of programming today that you do not use goto. It was one big loop, his code, with no jumps or JSRs, or it was like tight, fucking tight. And I thought, now that's code that you should inspire to write, really. Mm-hmm. So, along with being the masterful maestro that he is as a programmer, he's just amazing. Hey, what he's got in his sound driver is just amazing. So that was what I aspired to with my driver. And then, look, I'm going to skip forward quite a bit now. But about 2013, I picked up my old sound driver code and thought, you know what, I'm going to try my hand at some 6502 programming again. So I looked at my old code, and it was undocumented because who cared about that sort of thing back in the day? You know, right. You don't document. Yeah. Particularly when you just like doing straight assembly, you're not even like compiling pretty much. Mm-hmm. You know, like when you got source code compilers on the Amiga and stuff like that, you put a couple of lines of comments in, but then you just like, it's just all hexadecimal. Who cares, pretty much. So yeah, I picked up my old driver code, had a look at it, couldn't figure out much about what it was doing, so I wrote a completely new 6502 C64. You know, I had to relearn how to do a vertical blank interrupt just to run my own code because I forgot all that sort of stuff. But I wrote a new driver, and you know, this is much later on now, so you can have resid doing your sound emulation. You can have more than one SID chip, and you can have 4 or whatever, however many you like. So I wrote my new driver to handle up to 4 SID chips at once, which is great. It means it gives you a lot more filters. You got one filter per group of 3 channels then, so you could do so you could even like put 2 sounds across one channel, one SID chip, and the other 2 across another, but they're actually part harmony, and then filter one differently from the other. So it almost takes some of the fun out of it in a way, because you've turned the whole SID chip into a complete synthesizer then, pretty much, you know, and it loses its quaintness, I suppose. But it still sounds undeniably SID underneath. But having that many channels, then you don't have to do some of the typical effects like just doing an arpeggio on a bass note to give you 3 notes. So you're just using one channel instead of 3 notes to play a chord or something like that, you know, which Martin Galway was the first to do. And if you try and look at his reverse engineer his driver, don't try. It's almost impenetrable. Hey, that code is a freaking mess. You know, I'm talking about with his code being exquisite. Martin Galway's code it's a dog's breakfast. Hey, there's no polite way to put it, really. However, I found this really obtuse little article. I could look it up and give you the name of it later. Of this guy who actually did take the time and effort to reverse engineer Martin Galway's sound driver, and I tell you what. He didn't use it to the full effect that it could have been used. Hey, that thing was so... He wrote his sound driver like he writes his music, like he's writing it for an actual synthesizer and then just downscaling it back to a 3-voice device, you know. So his sound driver understood things almost in the way how you have MIDI. You know, it almost spoke MIDI language for music data. And he could do some pretty special things, timing based, not cycle based, not based off interrupts and stuff like that, but actually musically timing based, which made his code complex, and also meant that, you know, playing back one of his tunes chewed up that much more raster time because you've got this big fat bloated code that, you know, you look at Martin Galway's raster time, and because that mattered back then. Yeah. His cycles were precious. CPU cycles are very precious. You know, his code sometimes because you change your border colors to show the running size of that bit of code, you'd see his code and it'd jump down half the screen half the time. It's like, holy hell, no time left to do anything else on the computer. Then you bring like samples into the mix with his code, and you might as well just like forget about doing anything else with the CPU, you know. Even with those really bubbly, farty sort of Arkanoid sounds, they were hard-coded, and just reading, they didn't even have sample data. He was just setting points to actual machine code back in his driver and playing that back as a waveform, and that was the squirty, farty sounds in Arkanoid, you know, just to save conserved memory. He was just playing back his actual code as samples.
Yeah.
Which is pretty crazy, but, you know, it sounded pretty cool. We were all amazed by it, weren't we? You know, when we first heard that. It's like, holy shit, how's he doing that? You know? And he got that from Digidrums or something, if I recall right. I'm rambling, hey. I know you guys are going to edit this down, so it's all good.
Actually, no. Actually, not. Maybe not. No. We are known for long podcast interviews. But actually, interesting that you mentioned Arkanoid, because I was interviewing Chris Hülsbeck twice, you know, the German C64
True legend.
And he actually said he got the same technique as Martin Galway a few weeks earlier than him, but the game was delayed.
Oh, geez.
So he never got the credit of being the first because the game was delayed.
Well, what do you say about that? That's a little bit vain, isn't it? You know? Really? Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I can't prove it.
I respect it.
I can't prove it. But Chris is always saying that. I had the same idea, but the game was delayed and came too late. So, but I don't know if it's true or not.
Yeah. Well, you know, sometimes these personal conjectures happen between programmers. Who was the first to invent something?
Oh yeah.
You know, outside of music, I did this sprite multiplexer, which I thought was very novel back then because it pretty much allowed you to have as many sprites. Of course, you had that golden rule of no more than 8 in a row.
Right.
But it actually resorted all the sprites in a way where you could fill the screen pretty much, and that same multiplexer was then used in, was the game I.O., I think, where you just like an enormous amount of sprites circling around.
That beat 'em up, that shoot 'em up game, yes.
Yeah. And I had a look at the code. I don't think it's I.O., it's another one. Whichever one it was, I had a look at the code. And I'll tell you what, I know there's only so many ways you can do that sort of technique, but geez, it looked a lot like my frickin' code, hey. But so that's my own personal conjecture. It's like, you know, I haven't seen that many sprites on the screen before. I've been working on this a long time. That code looks a lot like mine, and I remember sending a disc over to a friend with my code going, have a look at this stuff. And I know that he knew something, so I've even got a little bit of a basis to have some suspicion that someone took my fucking code. But I'm not going to get into conjecture, you know. Like I said, it could just look similar. Because there's only so many ways you can do it. It was a particular type of trick, and you know that code for these tricks look pretty much the same. The only thing that changes is new optimizations that come, you know, because someone's counted out the cycles a bit better or something like that. Yeah.
It's interesting that you know so much about sound driver codes from other composers.
Well, you know, if you...
Well, again, when you're starting off, you rip them apart from other people to find out what you can learn, especially back in the early 80s when there wasn't anything. You didn't have something like the JCH player or these established drivers to work with. You had to make up your own to do it.
Absolutely. Those sound editors came along much later.
Right.
So you started exactly in '83, you said?
Oh, I got my C64 pretty early, hey.
Okay.
It was pretty early, but that wasn't even like the first code that I ever wrote. Like I had a Z, and I'll tell you what, this is pretty rare for Australia. Spectrum's never made it over here, really, But there was a couple of thousand sold. I was one of the fortunate people that had ended up with one. I bought a Spectrum and started doing some Z80 programming on that. Which I had to do because it was so rare, there's like 3 games I could buy. That was it. That was my collection of games for the ZX Spectrum. That's all I could find. The store that sold the unit had 3 games and that was it. Because it just wasn't popular here. Never marketed. So I did a bit of Z80 on that. Nothing spectacular. I started out, Atari 2600. But not playing games. Well, yes, playing games, but I had the basic programming cartridge that you plugged in, and you get this little like membrane type keyboard that you plug in to the joystick port, and you could type like 4 lines of code before it ran out of memory. Atari 2600.
Yeah.
So yeah, my first Hello World program was on the Atari 2600. So long. Well, I was programming pretty much not long after I took the dummy out of my mouth.
Okay, interesting.
And that's a lot of people, even into the mid to late '80s. There weren't too many places to find software. I mean, that's one of the ways that I started was I had a C64. There weren't stores like locally. I was a kid. I can't just go and get what I need, to do what I want to do. So the only other option is make it yourself. Figure it out and program the thing to do what you want it to do. And even with commercial software, you get a piece of commercial software, it's got a bug. Well, they're not going to update. You're not going to get a hot update over the internet or anything. So fix it yourself.
That's right. Yeah, it was all more DIY back then. Do it yourself.
Right.
Yeah. So, that I guess that's you have people that end up just the vast majority machines and just use them to play games, but the smaller minority actually were creators in some form.
Right.
And now looking back at it, that form happens to be art. You can look at everything that's ever been created, any demo, anything like that. It's all an expression of some degree. It's all art, and it all should be archived and remembered as art, I think, more so than just some little crazy application that spins something on screen. It's actually art to some degree.
Well, art could be argued, a lot of times art doesn't find its true value until long after it's been made.
That's true.
And it is, people criticize for still using a Commodore 64 or something, but it's like this is the medium that I would prefer to use to make whatever it is that I'm doing. Just like someone might paint, someone might whatever. And right now it might be considered kind of chintzy or dumb, but in the future the intrinsic value of any art goes up as soon as the artist dies. So
that's right. Well, that's absolutely right. It's true. Even fundamentally paintings, they become more valuable after. Oh God, maybe I just need to and then my music will be worth. Oh, then I can't cash in. I'll be dead. Shit, that's a bad painting.
Right? Exactly. Well, you make sure that all this stuff, like your family and whatnot, there's an estate that can handle all this stuff. So that 40 years after I'm dead, my demos may be actually worth something.
I've just solved the problem. Fake your own death.
There you go.
That's it. And then cash in. Put Elvis. They perpetual forever. So, with demos, they were to some degree just more examples of technical prowess than art, though. I think, that's true and false, I'd say, but, it more became, demos got more inherent production value around the Amiga era, I think, They actually started to put cut scenes together to make stories. Instead of just showing off effect after effect after effect, it became story. There's even one demo on someone, I don't know how they even did it, the effects in it. There's a famous demo on the Atari 2600. The Doctor, I think it's called. And there's only so many effects that you can do on Atari 2600, but it's how he's actually pulled a story together behind it that makes it probably one of the most awesome demos I've ever seen on any platform. I don't care if it's an Atari 2600. What he's done is freaking amazing, Again, I could even send you the link a little bit later on. Check it out. It'll blow your mind what this guy's done on Atari 2600, It's inspiring, actually. It inspires me. It's what I'm doing now, kind of thing. Thinking about it as art and production value, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, I wonder, as you said, you weren't in touch with all that demo scene and all that stuff until 2013. So how was it for you to find out that this demo scene and all this activity is still around?
Yeah, I certainly wasn't, and consider myself not to be part of, not actively demo scening. I suppose just doing this music right now, I am kind of active, but it's, a bit of a hybrid, what I'm doing. We'll get to that, though. But I was pretty much aware, I've been aware all along that the people have been doing other stuff on these old systems, but I wasn't, I suppose, all that interested beyond just seeing if something else of mine from days gone past have popped up on CSDB or something. That's what I've been mostly interested in, just trying to recoup my losses of things that I've, thrown out or whatever. But after I became interested in it again in 2013, then it was still a little bit of a surprise just how much activity there was. It wasn't just about archiving this stuff. I was just looking at it through my own perspective, I suppose. But yeah, there's still demo parties that are happening where there's new material being produced all the time. Just here locally, there was, I think it's there was one in
party.
Yeah. And there was, they have entries there for new competitions, and there's new entries, new art, whatever you want to call it, being produced all the time. It's good to see that it's not just becomes just a moment in time. It's still continuing on.
But I have read so many times that the demo scene is dying. I have to admit.
Well, yeah, but I think that the demo scene, it modifies itself. In the beginning, as you were saying, it was a lot of, these are technical effects. This is something that we're showing off that hasn't been done before. And,
yeah, sure.
And now it's turned into more of an art display. It's because a lot of demos now they don't worry about how technically good they are, but they worry more about telling that story or showcasing that art or some animation or something to that effect. It's not just all about.
That's true.
It's not because people have been at this for 30 some years now. How many more new things can we do?
Have been invented. There's nothing new to discover. Pretty much, we've bled that machine dry technically. So it's now become more about the art, like you say.
Right.
Yeah, like you're not going to. I doubt it. I think we're not going to see any spectacularly new effect come out of the Commodore 64. What's been invented has been invented. So it's now how we use those capabilities, I suppose. And well, that's a little bit different on the Amiga, though, isn't it? Really, when you think about it, because just recently that Vampire add-on came out, and that's almost. I feel a bit funny about that. Hey, it's almost like you're not using an Amiga anymore. It's have you taken it too far? But hey, I also can't accuse anyone of that. I'm doing SID music with up to, I think 16 channels. I don't give a shit about limitations anymore, It doesn't matter to me. I know the chiptune purists hate my guts because, it's not 3 channels, man. What are you doing? I'm putting reverb effects in there. But, this is just a different way of keeping a sentimentality and a bit of computing history alive. Like you said, it evolves over time, doesn't it?
Yeah. Well, hey, my 64 has dual SIDs. It's got 2 built into it, and I've got a cartridge I can throw a third in if I want to.
Nice.
But and they do. There are accelerators for the 64. There's the Super CPU that was out for a while. I just saw an article where they were talking about they've ported Wolfenstein 3D to it. They're optimizing the code. And there's also the Turbo Chameleon, which is
I have one.
Yeah. Okay. So those things are amazing. So there is a bit more that we can squeeze out of these machines, but. But again, I think that most of it is mostly now for the art of it rather than just to show what you can do.
I guess a point in there though is when does the machine stop becoming the machine that we know because we've squeezed or added something onto it, so much onto it that it's basically something else now.
Right.
Is there ever an upper limit, a glass ceiling? Can you go too far with that sort of thing?
Right.
I think I'm walking a bit of a razor's edge at the moment, just with the music that I'm doing. It's some of it admittedly sounds more synth than C64 at times. And you got to really remember to try and pare it back, wind it back, and not forget your roots. Pay homage to the heritage and not fuck with the sound too much. But hey, that's part of the fun of it, is seeing what you can do when you let's just think about it in a hypothetical way. If you had I saw a post on Facebook like this. What would be your dream hardware in a Commodore 64? What combination would you have? Would you have a faster CPU? Would you have dual SID chips? Or would you have, a VIC chip that maybe had some sort of memory copy of glitter type thing in it, or more sprites or whatever? What would be your dream C64? Kind of keep it within the, canon lore, the boundaries a little bit. And mine would have been to have just more polyphony out of the sound chip, because that was it. I did some Vic effects and stuff like that with my sprite multiplexer, but it was the sound that I was interested in. If I had it my way, I would have had as many SID chips as I could in the C64, and then it wouldn't have sounded like the C64 back then, let alone now. I suppose,
Well, the original specs for the SID chip, I think, called for way more than 3 voices. They were.
Bob Yans was working on it too. He was having the heavies put on him from up above, to get it out quick. He was working on a some sort of channel mixer, multiplexer type thing within the chip that mixes down. So you could just I can't remember exactly how it was explained on a circuit level. I read the interview with Bob Yans about it just a few weeks back, but that's all it takes for me to forget half of what I read. It was some sort of mixed down so you could have more, and it was also had a design concept for it to have wavetable built in. which then became the Ensoniq synthesizer that he went to after Commodore. He then expanded that idea. But yeah, the SID chip is and look, there's a lot of sound chips back then, but all the others can go to hell. There's nothing that even gets close to touching the SID chip. You know, it was so far ahead of its time in a land of one voice beepers and stuff like that. This sound chip came along with its 3 sound channels, and you can make them sound like whatever waveform. Well, with 4 waveforms, but that was like too much choice almost compared to other sound chips. Right. You know, it was like a new world. That thing was just like the Vic chip. The whole computer was damn amazing. Really?
Yeah.
And surprising that something so amazing like that actually came out of Commodore to me. Commodore. That was something they bought into, pretty much. You know, that wasn't their innovation, but they actually did innovate with the Commodore 64, and that's a success that I don't think it's like a flash in the pan almost.
Yeah.
You know, it was the shining star in muddy waters back in the 80s. There's nothing that came close to it at all.
Yeah.
Okay. The Amstrad had some nice, pretty colours, but geez, what did it have? Really, it couldn't do much graphical. You know, it didn't know how to smooth scroll or anything like that. It had a YM2419 or 8910 sound chip. Yeah, that's all right, but it's no SID chip. You know, don't even compare the two.
Right.
But I actually wonder, by the way, the Australian model of the Commodore 64 has a different case. Maybe
yes.
External company. I'm wondering why that ever happened.
You'll have to actually even remind me, what is the difference in the cases?
I think it was just some company made a case that looked similar to the 64C case, that you could take your bread bin and just transfer the insides to this newer case.
Yeah, that's right. I remember that. I can't remember who it was that was making those.
I actually bought one, and I'm waiting for it to ship from UK. So let me.
They're cool looking. I saw one at the Vintage Computer Festival earlier in the year.
So let me see. I will put it here in the chat.
Okay.
So I bought this one.
Right.
Where's the chat? They've changed Skype. There it is.
It's just on me.
It says refurbished Commodore 64 Australian case modelware. And that looks a lot different from...
Yeah, that's it, alright.
Yeah.
And it says produced in South Australia by Micro Accessories of SA.
There you go. That's who made it.
Yep.
Yeah, so...
It's cool looking. I'll give it that.
Yeah.
It's very good.
It's actually interesting that it's cheaper than German C64.
Really?
Yeah. The prices are crazy sometimes, you know.
They are.
Some people want like 230 euros just for the motherboard. No case whatsoever.
Yeah.
Like, you know. So.
You saw that C65 that sold recently?
Oh, good God, yeah.
Oh my! Would you, if you could afford it? Would you? I would. If I could, I can't. But if I could afford it, I would have been in for it. Hey.
I don't know. It's a cool looking thing, but what are you gonna do with it? There's nothing for it. There's no software for it.
There's one demo for it.
Yeah, and the one that sold for I think it was 18 grand doesn't have the VIC 3. It doesn't even have a video chip, and it's not like it's not like there's a lot of them floating around that you can throw in there. So so it's just a doorstop. You know, you can't do anything with it.
That's true. I didn't realise that one didn't have the chip.
Yeah, there was. I've seen 3 of them go just recently, and they each keep getting more expensive. One was the 18,000 was the one that didn't even work. It didn't have the chip. Then there was one that went for like 21 that I think it did have it, but it didn't have the extra memory. And then the one that had the extra memory and the chip, I think that just went for 90,000, some ludicrous amount.
Yeah, that's crazy. Hey?
Yeah. But they're working on making a replica of it with FPGAs, the Mega 65. So we all still have a chance in the future to have a computer that we can't do anything with.
And that I'll be up for. I'll buy one if that comes out. If that guy actually, that was a Kickstarter, wasn't it?
No. No. What you mean is the C64 Mini. That was a Indiegogo. But what we mean is the Mega 65 by the Amiga Museum by the Germans. You know.
Oh, right. Yeah.
And they are doing an FPGA based Amiga 65, and it's actually a reversed engineered C65. Yeah.
Oh, awesome!
Yeah,
awesome.
Yeah, pardon?
Sorry, how far along is that? Like, are they up to manufacturing, or are they still designing?
They're still in the process of. It's slow going because it's not necessarily a product that they're talking about bringing to market like they would like to, but it's more of an archive of making sure that it's documented. They want to make sure that that all the hardware for it is documented, and then once that's done, like the plans for it can be open source and anyone can make them if they want.
Yeah.
But I don't think they've gotten to that yet.
Will.
Yeah.
Oh, cool. That'd be really. Yeah, that'd be good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I think I remember some of the specs of that machine, the proposed specs or something. It sounded like it was going to have some pretty good stuff in it.
Yeah. It was supposed to be real nice. Dual SIDs. It had the VIC-3. Lots more colors, obviously, and
I think 265. I think 56.
256 colors. Okay, but I think it had a palette of like 4096 or something.
Or was it 4096?
I think that's what the palette was. But you could only use 256 at a time from that. Yeah. Or something like that. All those old computers had that thing where it was like, you've got a palette of this many colors, but you can only use this many colors.
Use this. Yeah. I would wonder whether, like, if the C65 ever, let's just say it did exist, that Commodore did actually release it as a product way back then, one could argue whether it would have been as exploitable as the C64 was, in C65 mode, or maybe even in C64 mode, which I'm sure it had a fallback compatibility thing about it.
Yes, it did. And you could even, from what I gather, you could use some C65 mode stuff in 64 mode.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. I actually read it up. So you had in the total you had 4,096 colors, but depending on the resolution, the higher you go, the lower the number of colors is you can use.
Yeah, just like the Amiga.
Yeah. That thing spec wise is probably pretty close to the Amiga in ways.
Probably, yeah.
For an 8-bit machine,
Yeah.
It's too bad that they didn't really, because from what I gather, this was mostly, it was busy work given to the 8-bit engineers. It was just something to keep them occupied. They were never actually going to bring it to market, which really kind of sucks.
Yeah. Was it that, or was it just so much the market had already moved on? Because Commodore.
I think it had moved on, and I think that the writing was on the wall that Commodore was not going to be around much longer, and so they were just saying to the 8-bit designers, "Here, do something."
Yeah. Just in case they could find, eke something out of the last things of the 8-bit market, but no, it had moved by then. Yeah.
The 8-bit market was still. they were still selling original NESs back then.
Yeah.
Even the 64, the bare bones Commodore 64 was still being sold in,
Yeah.
I think in like 92 or 93 they still sold almost 1 million of them.
Yeah, no, it's crazy, hey.
Yeah.
Actually, in UK and Germany, Commodore was around 2 years longer.
Yeah.
So the C64 was sold until 96 in Germany and UK.
Holy
so
hell.
yeah.
96.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember my grandfather went to the electronics store and he got me a Commodore 64 in 96. Like, look, a gaming machine. It's a Commodore 64. And they are selling it for 100 German marks,
Dang.
as a gaming machine,
But yeah, hey, it's good to see that stuff hasn't gone away even for a consumer market though. Like after its time, even that is after its time. Even talking more recently to now with as you guys as I confused the mini C64 and the mini NES even that was like wild success. Mm-hmm. That went crazy worldwide, I believe.
Yeah,
it was certainly very hard to find one here. If you don't go in on the day it's released, you missed out, sort of thing, with that mini NES. So there's a market for nostalgia for sure.
Yeah,
I think.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
I'm trying to catch in on. I'm trying to ride in on the back of it a little bit at the moment, I suppose too.
Yeah, so let's talk about Bitpop.
Yeah.
Now that we've talked for 45 minutes and not even gotten close to it.
Yeah. Well, we danced around it a little bit, but back 2013, I was looking on one of the other websites I looked at, other than CSDB, was Qued for the remix music.
Yes.
C64 remixes. And I'll tell you what, some of the pieces of music it just blows my mind what some people have done with some of those old tunes, but they've done completely new versions of it. You wouldn't even call half of them remixes. They sound like something completely different. Some of them,
right.
That remix. It's awesome stuff, though. Some of it's mind blowing. And I thought, well, I might try my hand at that because it's been a while since I've done some music at that stage, and I found a selection of C64 tunes that I liked. And I wouldn't say so much remix them, but I just arranged them a little bit differently. My thinking was, I was trying to imagine how Rob Hubbard and Galway, I was trying to imagine what they were imagining when they wrote it, because they would have been thinking of an orchestra in their head, not a pulse wave. And then they'd think, well, how do I represent that orchestra? Well, I'll have to do it with a pulse wave, but you don't think of the waveform, you think of the sound. So I was trying to think of the sound that they were thinking of. So I was trying to keep my arrangements true to the original, not muck with the timing or change stanzas or move the chorus forward and the verse backwards and do stuff like that. But try and keep it true to the original, but just modernise it, make it sound as if that orchestra was an actual orchestra instead of an arpeggio or something like that. So I took all the SID tricks out of it and made it sound as if it would have sounded with the band playing it. That resulted in an album of 8 songs called the 8-Bit Spindle. I've got it hanging up on my... Oh, you can see this. I actually did a print run of 2,000. I sold 2,000 of them and also a digital download. So that was 2013. And I did that with Renoise here, which is a tracker, the sound tracker heritage pretty much. Well, I'll get to how that plays into Bitpop soon. And then more recently, I was working on a follow-up to the 8-Bit Spindle called, I don't even know, I had a working title of, I think I was just going to call it Commodore, something lame like that. No inspiration for a title. But it was a group of Amiga music and also C64 music that I liked. And I thought, I'm just going to do my own, true to the original, but more sound channels and all that sort of stuff there. Make them sound the way that I thought they would have wanted them to sound in some way, you know, when they wrote it. And I got to the very end of writing that, arranging that album, and that was earlier this year. So that was quite a gap, 2013 up to now. I've sort of been plugging away at this follow-up album for about 12 months though. I just completed the last song. I was just at the point of just doing the post-production on it. And then then Coldplay came out with that Something Just Like This song, you know, and that was charting on the radio, and I just fucking loved it. You know, I'm a huge Coldplay fan, and I thought, I feel like doing a version of it. I didn't know how to do it to make it sound like me, I suppose. Something I could have just made it sound like another doof techno, do a house version of it, do some sort of trance, or just slow it down, do a flamenco, or you know, you can change its style or whatever. But I wanted to do something that was a little bit more unique, and I didn't know what to do there until the next day after, like it hit me with the first time I heard that song. When I was just like kicking back one Friday afternoon, having a drink, and it came on. I went, oh, I like that song. Couldn't figure out how I'd want to do it. And then Saturday, I thought I was back on the computer and I was mucking around with my latest version of my sound driver, C64 sound driver, and I started putting Something Just Like This into my sound driver. And yeah, it was all right. It was using about 12 channels. Oh, hang on, 9 channels, sorry, 3 SIDs equivalent to. I thought, I could do something with this. I might do like, what would it be like if I took some of the limitations off that chip? You know, we all try to exploit these chips and do tricks, but what if you just like just break through that glass ceiling totally? Fuck it, break through it. Don't feel restricted. Use its sound, but don't feel restricted by its sound. Have as many sound channels as you like. Use as many low pass filters as you like. Do whatever you want with it, but just at its core, make sure it's that 8-bit waveform that we all know and love. So what I started to do was sample just raw sounds, SID sounds. And this is where renoise comes into it. I'm actually not using my C64 driver at all to do Bitpop. What I've used my C64 driver for is just to create individual sounds. Now that sound, like one of the songs that I did that actually I'm pretty proud of, I must say, it worked out well. I was a bit surprised because, you know, I don't consider myself an awesome musician. I think I'm pretty mediocre. I'm a David Whittaker, not a Rob Hubbard. Hey, you know, but it turned out all right. But there was one sound in there where I replicated the wolf howl in Thriller. Michael Jackson's Thriller. It took me 7 sound channels in my sound driver to make that sound, where I'm wavetabling every frame, every cycle, you know, using my driver's wavetable ability, which is actually a lot like Martin Galway's after reading this thing where his was disassembled, because that sort of shaped the new version of my sound driver. So I'm using my driver to create the fundamental sounds that get sampled from Resid, dumped into my Renoise library, and then with Renoise I'll use as many tracks, channels as I like. I try and keep it reasonable. I don't try and embellish too much and overwork it. Still pretty much like my previous albums. I think I've gone a little bit too far with that sometimes, and sometimes it loses its SID qualities a bit. But you know, that's part of it. How far can you push that chip how much do you need to do before it just sounds like another synthesizer? And I'll tell you what, you don't have to push that chip all that far. That's how freaking awesome it is. If you have a quadrasid, you've basically got all you need. You can meld enough waveforms. If you know enough about sound engineering, you can shape a quadrasid, its output, all those waveforms, basic waveforms, into such a complex waveform that it sounds like any other sound that you could create on any VST with any digital audio workstation nowadays, pretty much. You know, the SID chip was that close to being. It's a synthesizer. You know, an awesome one. And as soon as you take those limitations off, the sky's the limit. You can make any sound you like. It's hard work because I'm doing it the hard way a little bit because I'm still using my sound driver at its core to create wavetable wolf howls and stuff like that. And all my percussion in my Bitpop music is generally 1 or 2 channels of wavetable percussion and stuff like that, straight out of my sound driver. But I need to engineer and produce this a little bit too, so in Renoise it gives me the ability to do my compression, my leveling, put reverb on, other effects that fill out the background sound of an arpeggio or something like that. You put some reverb on it and it starts to sound a lot smoother instead of this really harsh C64 arpeggio. It takes the rough edges off it and stuff like that. So I'm doing that, and at its core, what I'm trying to do in some way, I suppose, is chip tunes are great because it pays homage. It's true to the original limitations of the machine, and that's fantastic. But it's also got a very small audience. Hey, it's only us all of us that grew up with that music that know about that and will probably ever know about it. It doesn't have new people coming into the audience, into the community all the time. It's a diminishing return. Right. It's great to see that the scene's still alive, that it's there, but like you said, it's dying a little bit.
Is it? So that's the question.
Well, some people say it is, some people say it isn't. But it's always going to be under jeopardy, though, because the people that grew up with this machinery are getting older, and we're the ones most invested in that time. That was a part of our lives. The newer generations, it's just history, and it may be forgotten history one day unless it evolves. So my approach is to try and consumerize SID chip sounds a little bit, make it a little bit more ready for like a general consumption. So I think Bitpop with its hybrid, take the limits off but keep it at its 8-bit core, allows it to have a bit of a broader audience, because it kind of sounds like proper real, in inverted commas, quotes, real music, but it has this different old school quality about it. So I'm trying to broaden the audience, I suppose. For those that wouldn't be so nerdy or geeky, here's your dose of SID chip, in a way that you can actually digest it, perhaps.
Right.
Is what I'm thinking. And I think it's Bitpop is not something that is overly known as a genre. Chiptune is more well known. I'm actually a little bit surprised how many people do know about the term Bitpop, but I don't know if it's just the people I've come across or if in general, those of us that are a bit retro know about. Quite frankly, until I pulled out my code earlier this year to do something just like this, I didn't know that Bitpop was even a genre. I found it on Wikipedia and went, I'm kind of doing
That's the same thing, yeah. When you emailed me, the first thing I did is looking up it at Wikipedia. I'm like, okay, that's a thing,
Absolutely, and it exists. I went, holy shit, look at this. 8-Bit Weapon, which is actually a pretty well-known group. They're categorised as Bitpop, but I think they actually use more real instruments than C64 or any sort of sound chip. So I'm and let's be clear about this. Everything that I do, there's not one real instrument in it. It's all C64 or all. I just did Muse's Uprising on my last album, and that's all Atari 2600 tier chip. And it fucking rocks, but but still, I took the limit off how many channels I could use. But you can hear that crunchy, grindy Atari 2600, slightly out of tune sound to it, glitchy almost, you know. Mm-hmm. But as many sound channels as I needed to get the job done to make it so it sounded full enough where someone who's not into chip tunes could listen to it and go, you know what, I can kind of get this as music. Sort of thing. So it's just trying to find a new audience to keep a sound alive that I love dearly, and I fear that might die out with a generation or something like that.
It's true. I mean, nowadays people don't know. The youngers don't know what diskettes are. You know. So that's true.
Oh, they don't know it from an icon. They press to save a document.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so it's totally valid.
It's a disc to save that icon, you know. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's just because I'm in the middle of all this, but it feels like the Bitpop genre as a whole has been getting a lot more exposure. And again, I don't know if that's just because of where I happen to be, so I'm going to see it more or hear about it more, but I feel like I'm hearing more about it as time goes on. Like, it's becoming more and more popular, you know, amongst the mainstream music industry. And there's even, you know, there's mainstream musicians that are sampling, you know, game and demo songs and.
Oh well, that's been. There's been court cases.
Oh yeah.
Legal cases fought over that sort of stuff. Famously was again Lazy Jones, David Whittaker's Lazy Jones, which was used in Kerncraft, I think, wasn't it? Something like that.
Something like that.
Yeah, could be. Yeah.
Yeah, that was settled out of court. David Whittaker actually got some royalty from it in the end, I believe. But Timbaland has done it.
Yeah.
And look, there's quite a few that have done it. But again, you're talking about where you've got commercial music using the occasional blippy sound, generally, or maybe a small riff or something like that, or whatever, just a segment of. Not that the whole thing is all done in like blippy sounds, chip sounds, just with vocals over the top.
Well, some of it is. There was a demo in 2001 by Focus, Time Waster, and the music was taken and some Dutch musician took the music, just that music, and then just sang vocals over it.
All right.
Like the whole up song, and I've tried to find, you know, comments on it or whatever, and I can't find anything. Initially, from what I gather, I think they were like standing by. No, this is original track, but then I can't find any reference to it after that. So.
Oh man, you've just burst my bubble. I thought I was the first to just take a chip tune and put vocals over it.
Well, I don't know when this guy did it. I mean, the demo was from 2001, but I think they did this in 2009 or something.
That still well predates me because I've been doing this for a couple of months now. Since June, I think it is. It's when I first started. And in that time I'm currently working on song number 35. So I've done 35 songs since June. At least one a week, sometimes two a week. If I'm not asleep, then I'm sitting in front of Renoise, or at work, I'm sitting in front of Renoise, you know. I got up early this morning, actually. I was up at, this interview started at 5 a.m. my time. I was up at 2 o'clock this morning, and 2 a.m. And the first thing I do is put the kettle on and make myself a coffee. The second thing is turn on the computer to start up Renoise. So about 5 minutes past 2, I'm back in there plugging away, doing what I was doing before I went to sleep last night.
So it's actually 6 a.m. for you.
Yes, it is.
Wow.
Dang.
Okay, I was not aware
Yowza.
of that.
Good morning.
Yeah.
For me, it's 9 p.m., you know?
Yeah, well, luckily for me, I'm up early pretty much all the time anyway, so this works for me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Before we get
Well,
back
first-
into it, I've
yeah.
got to actually, because it's actually 3 p.m. here, I have to go to a conference for work.
Oh,
So, yeah, they sprung that on me last minute. But I will keep this recording, and you guys just pretend I'm here and I'm just not talking.
all right.
Right, yeah.
This happens more often than you would think.
Oh no.
Yeah.
I don't envy.
Yeah,
Someone's got to go off and earn the bucks now.
yeah,
The
pretty
bucks.
much.
Oh, it's been a pleasure talking to you.
Yes, absolutely. A pleasure talking to you as well.
Make sure you put your headphones up somewhere where I can see them so I can pretend you're still there.
Yeah, well, I'm going to turn the video off so you'll just see a picture of me.
All right.
There you go.
Cool, then.
All right.
All right. So the question is actually where you want to go with that. What's your next step?
Sure. Yeah, I'm not quite sure. I'm trying to. Well, like I said, I've done Muse's Uprising. I did that with all the sounds of the tier chip, the Atari 2600. So I'm currently reading up some data sheets on the YM series of sound chips found in the ZX Spectrum, Amstrad, Spectrum Plus, I should say, Amstrad and the like. MSX computers, I think, had the YM chip in there, or AY chip.
You mean Yamaha or something?
Yamaha.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I want to start exploring other sound chips a little bit, and then I've got the question mark already. Do I just exclusively do a Yamaha sound chip in this song, or do I start to mix Sid and Yamaha together in the same song? Like how hybrid can I go with all this? You know, how far do I want to take my own limit, sort of thing, before it starts to lose some authenticity, perhaps?
I mean, there's even a console with that concept. For example, the Mega Drive actually has a Texas Instruments and a Yamaha sound chip, but
Yeah, well, that's
most
true.
actually only used one of the two chips. And there are only a few games that actually use both.
Oh, really?
Yeah, for
Well,
example, Batman. Batman is one of those that uses both sound chips. The Texas
Right.
Instruments one and the Yamaha. So,
Right. Well, now I suddenly don't feel so uneasy with the idea of mixing two sound chips into one Bitpop track because it's already been done on a hardware level. You know?
yeah.
So that's like eases my pain a little bit. Well, yeah, you know, so even that gives you some interesting combinations there. You can start to mix AM synthesis, like the SID chip, with FM synthesis and see what you get, what comes out of it. Whether it's distinguishable as actually sounding like an 8-bit computer anymore would be, well, you know, that might be questionable, but it's worth exploring, I suppose, and see what it sounds like. That's how I look at it, you know. Just what can you get away with? What can you make it sound like? You know, and part of it is the challenge of how many of those SID chips do I need to make it not sound like a SID anymore, type thing. You know, and surprisingly, the answer is very few SID chips before it starts to sound something other than. You know, just going back to those tricks that we used to do, like the arpeggio effect, so you can fit a chord into one sound channel. Since you have two SID chips in a machine, there's virtually no need to do the arpeggio effect again. You could dedicate one SID chip just to playing chords, and then you've still got 3 other voices to do drum, percussion, bass. So you almost eliminate half the arpeggio is one of the most identifiable sounds in the 8-bit audio spectrum, of effects. So if you don't have to do that effect anymore, then you've almost half lost the quality, that unique identifying quality of the SID chip, just by having 2 chips. So it doesn't take many of them to. That's the only thing that sound chip lacked, was the number of voices that it had, sound channels.
I mean, there were some crazy needs sometimes to limitations. I mean, for example, if you look into some tunes of RoboCop 3 or Turtles, the coin up on Commodore 64, they actually had just one voice for the whole music.
Yeah, and also I think quite famously. Martin Galway is quite an innovator, hey, because I think his version, his title screen music for Ping Pong on the ZX Spectrum, one sound channel, one beeper, sounds like he's playing 3 or 4 notes at a time or something like that. It's pretty impressive. I think that's one of the big achievements on that machine. Martin Galway, I think I pretty much before just totally sledged the quality of his code. His music drivers just, not coded all that well. But I tell you what, that man, as far as innovator goes, he was the first one to do the arpeggio. He was the first one to do the 4th channel wave, samples, and then away from the C64 on the Spectrum with that ping pong music. I think that was the best example. I don't know if it was the first example of that sort of sound channel multiplexing on that computer, but it's certainly the best example, I think, that I can think of, for sure. That music is just, if I don't know if there's actually a better piece of music on the Spectrum than the ping pong music. That'd probably be my favourite piece, because it's just amazing what he's done there. He's actually like quite a genius, that guy. I'm sure he's very humble about it, though.
Do you actually follow what those composers are doing nowadays? I mean, there are a lot of Kickstarters and Indiegogo campaigns, like listening to my music on played by orchestra.
Yep. And there's that Project Hubbard at the moment.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, and that's pretty awesome. I can't wait to see what comes out of that. Who's that being done with? Who's he collaborating with?
Chris Abbott.
That's right. Yeah.
We had him one of the recent podcasts. We had him as a guest.
Yeah. Short memory. Yeah, that's right. Chris Abbott.
Right.
Yes, that's pretty awesome. I think that's coming out. And what's the other one that's happening? I think Matt Gray is doing... No, not Matt Gray.
Yes, actually Matt Gray, yeah. He is doing a CD too, yes. And
that's right.
And of course Jeroen is working since 2 years on his CD as well.
Yeah, he's never stopped, has he? Like, I believe Rob Hubbard, for example, has not really done... I don't know how much he's done recently musically. He's
on
more...
computer music, not so much, no. But you are right. Jeroen never stopped, yeah.
Yeah, he's never stopped. I think Rob Hubbard's been doing more audio directing, hasn't he? Or producing or something. Not so much composing even, but the production side, I think. I'm not sure who for or who with. Can't remember.
That's true, yeah. Well, I have heard the term like semi-retired,
Yeah. He recently got some sort of honorary induction into some music academy, I believe.
Yes, he got a doctoral degree for his music
And
inventions.
no one better deserving of it than him. He deserves it, hey?
Yes, it's amazing. I mean, what most people even don't know, he did a lot of music on a PC speaker too.
He did.
And some of the later works he did, it's really amazing what he gets out of a beeper.
Yeah. It's hard to know sometimes whether these guys are musicians first or technical programmers, technicians, engineers first. I suppose, Obviously, they're both. But even Rob's early C60, I think he was probably the first person to even start changing instruments on a sound channel. Before Rob Hubbard came along, you'd set a waveform on a sound channel, and that would be that waveform for the entire piece on that channel. But he actually started to put instrument definitions into his sound driver so he could change, and that's where he started getting bass, snare, stuff like that. Instead of just one sound, there'd be multiple sounds per channel. It all seems so bloody obvious to do that now, but there was a point in time where no one was doing it. He came along and did it. So it's innovation, isn't it? I suppose back then, even I guess necessity is the mother of all invention. When you've got such a limited machine, you have to innovate. You're forced to if you want to do something, to some degree. Instead of like now where you've got NVIDIA GPU that just does whatever you throw at it. You've got no limitations almost. Back then, you had to fight for every little bit of CPU. You had to do all these little things to try and make the machine do something that seemed half decent half the time.
But most people, as you asked, they actually were musicians. But to actually be able to make music on a computer, you had to learn coding. So I guess most composers actually were musicians first.
Yeah, that's true. I guess it's just the ones that rise to the top that are the ones that can blend their musicianship along with their technical prowess and provide both something that's got the artistic content to it as well as the technical capability to actually, make that artistic goal something that's real. So, yeah, that's true. I think, of course, and like I said, it's those ones that rise to the top, but there was many others that I think were also more technical and more a programmer than a musician. They sort of grew into being a musician. Joerg Tell is obviously a musician,
Yeah.
But Charles Deanan, for example, he wrote the driver and learnt to be a musician. He was the opposite kind of thing.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, he wrote. I believe that's the way it works. I hope I'm not getting it wrong, but I believe that's the case. He wrote the sound driver that Joerg used, but then later on, Charles himself tried his hand at doing music. So he learned that as the second nature. It was a programmer as his first nature sort of thing. And I think a few of the other guys, I was like that pretty much. I was just trying to find ways of making sounds out of the machine, and I had to learn music as I went.
Okay, interesting.
I think that first version of my sound driver, which was partly reverse engineered Anthony Crowther code, I did a version of Jean-Michel Jarre's Rendezvous, because it seemed like everyone was doing a version of that, and half the tune was even out of tune. I didn't even know which notes to play. I took it over to a mate's place, saying, "Have a listen to this," and he was like, "Oh goodness gracious, that sounds bad," because I was only just learning the music side. It was only just by even now actually. I can't read sheet music. I can only play enough keyboard to get some ideas down. I can't live perform. And I only use a MIDI keyboard just so I can do chord progressions and stuff like that, because I need to trial and error them. I can't just work it out in my head. I'm not. I've changed. I've grown as a musician, I believe. Practice makes perfect, or whatever you want to call it. And I've learnt more. But it's late learning, I suppose. I'm not. It's not. I'm self-taught musician.
You never wanted to take lessons?
Time never permitted. That was it, really. As a kid. As a kid, you had school, and then I was busy doing other activities instead of doing music lessons or whatever. And then as an adult, career came first. I just didn't have time for it, pretty much. It wasn't until recent years where I started doing music again. So for quite a long time, I wasn't active doing anything other than my career. It's just recently, really, where I've come back into it. So it's been a bit of a learning curve again, that's for sure, I've got to say. But it's funny, it is like riding a bike. You can naturally do it to some degree. You never forget how to do it, I suppose, is it. But even now, I still have to count out semitones to figure out the chords when I'm doing arpeggio. I can't just look at it and go, "Oh, that's a major seventh," or something. Even though I understand the terminology, and I do kind of know a bit of music theory, but I'm certainly not a trained musician. I'm far from it.
Okay.
Yeah. But and all that just came out of just the love of sound shit, pretty much. That was it. I just wanted to explore. So I'm a geek first, a musician second. I was just wanted to explore what you could do with an 8-bit computer back then, and even now with those sounds. Yeah.
So you are not a fan of emulation?
Oh no, I love it.
You are?
I love it.
Okay. Because you mentioned you're using a real C64 and recording all those noises, right?
I'm using Resid. Yeah, which is, an emulator, SID chip emulator. So that's what I'm using.
Oh yeah, sure. I see.
Yeah.
I see.
Yeah, via Vice.
But isn't that sounding a bit different compared to an original C64 SID?
Resid's pretty accurate, I think. It's got 2 emulation modes.
I know, yes. I know.
And Resid's pretty good. Hey, I was reading an article on, there's a company that makes do you know what it is? They're digital audio software like Ableton Live and any music production software. You got plugins for sounds, pretty much. And there's a plugin that you can get these plugins that sound like 8-bit sound chips. And there's one of those called Plug Chip Sounds. I could have opted to use a VST like that in Renoise and use their sound set and their sound generator. But I chose not to. I'm sampling using Resid out of my own sound driver. But the thing is, the point I was going to get to, there was an article on the Plug website, the creators of this VST, and they said that you can play the same sound on the same SID chip and get a different result every time. Minor, but we're talking about an analog device here. It's not it's not exact. So there's
that's true.
Minor differences, even between individual plays of that sound or that piece of music on the same sound chip, let alone different sound chips or how it's emulated, you know. So it's a whole broad category just in itself. How many revisions of SID chips were there? Let's say you had the 6581, there was revision 1 to 4 or 5, and then the 8580 came along, which had better filters and stuff like that. So the SID chip in itself as hardware changed over time. So I don't know how much it matters whether ReSID or any other SID chip emulator is that accurate, because there was never accuracy in the first place.
Yeah, good point.
In a nutshell, you know. So that's the way I'm looking at it.
Good point.
Yeah. So it comes out of my driver into ReSID via Vice, and then it ends up as a sample that I'll load into Renoise, and then I try not to bastardize it and mess with it too much. I try and use it clean, but I will add effects to it. I'll do what's necessary to bring it up to a minimum sort of level, you know, to take some of that roughness out of it, to make it a little bit more mass market, consumer friendly sort of thing.
And do you have any plans to, go big with it, or is it's I guess more like a hobby project?
It's a hobby project for sure, and I think that there's a few limiting factors there. I still think that it's a niche market, maybe a bit broader, because you're not just bound to the rules of chiptunes. So you have a bit of a chance at a broader audience, but I still don't think it's a big market. And maybe if someone had this idea that's actually a trained musician, they could do more with it than me. I'm quite happy to admit my flaws and my limitations. I'm like the SID chip myself. Like the shirt. There'll be no video at the end of this.
Yeah, I see it. Very nice.
I'm as flawed as the sound chip itself as a musician. I'm flawed, but I'm doing my best with what I can. I don't think I have the capability to do much more with it than what I'm currently doing, but I don't mind pushing the borders and just seeing how far I can reach out with this. I've been surprised by how far it has reached at times. There's been a couple of stations that have actually played me over the air, radio stations, so that's actually starting to penetrate into the broader market, just locally even here. I know there's a few others around too, but there's a community radio station, 4ZZZ, and they have a retro hour show where they play all sorts of just random, obtuse, obscure versions, remixes and arrangements. And they played my version of Michael Jackson's Thriller over the airwaves, into people's radios. It's like, oh my God, that's actually penetrating into the general consumer market. Now, I know there's one or two other there's a community station in the US that have done the same with one of my tracks. So it's actually got out there a little bit. I don't know how far I can go with it, really. Maybe I'll never be rich and famous, put it that way. Don't give up your day job, as they say.
I see. Yeah, I guess if you want to do that, you have to be a Let's Player on YouTube or Twitch or something, and play Minecraft and that stuff.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah. There's some guys that are doing something similar. There's a YouTube channel called 8-Bit Universe, their name is, and they're doing Nintendo-based sounds. They do covers of popular songs, old songs, TV themes, you name it. They have like a Nintendo-sounding version of it, charting music. Mm-hmm. They're pretty awesome. They're a little bit more true form, though. They stay to the limitations of the NES and the number of sound channels that they use, as well as how much they produce the sounds after it's been raw sampled or whatever, or emulated. They do put vocals over the top like I'm doing as well. but it's certainly more true to chiptune than what I'm doing. But they've got quite a large following. I've got no idea how they've done it. I'm shit at social marketing, so maybe it's just a matter of what I'm doing could reach further, even if I just knew how to market myself better. I don't know. But they seem to be doing pretty well with it. They're worth checking out. They've got some pretty awesome versions of like actually their version of Thriller, talking about that, is pretty wicked. What they've done with the Nintendo sounds there, it's pretty wicked stuff. Yeah, and they've got a whole lot. There's about 4 or 5 of these guys. 8-Bit Universe is about 4 or 5 people, and they have new stuff coming out every week. Like, I'm managing about 1, if I'm lucky, 2 songs a week at the moment. They seem to be doing 3, 4, 5, 6 songs. I don't know, because there's so many more of them than there is of me. Yeah, so they've got a lot of volume there of music that they're creating. That said, you know, I don't mind calling a spade a spade. I've admitted to my own flaws as a musician, or weaknesses. What they're doing is more akin to David Whittaker. They're working on quantity over quality. Everything sounds the same. They've almost taken the artistic element out of it and just made it a production line sort of sound. It sounds great, but it's very production line, I suppose. Maybe that's part because they're not limiting themselves. They are limiting themselves to the capabilities of that sound chip, and there's only so much you can do. But I still have this little inkling that they could be doing a little bit more creative stuff. Maybe I'm just looking at it through my own more Bitpoppy eyes or ears. I don't know. But a lot of it sounds the same. I worry for myself that what I'm doing is starting to sound the same now. Up to
Not from what I caught. Not from what I caught.
Well, thank you. But as a musician, it's my obligation to worry about whether I'm falling into just repetitive. You know, everything's just the same. You know, how do you keep it fresh? How do you innovate as a musician? Not a programmer, but as a musician, how do you keep it going? You know, and that's why I'm looking at different sound chips and maybe hybriding more than one sound chip together.
Atari and Commodore, the 2 rivals, in the same song.
That'd be fun. And do it the real hard way. Use the Atari percussion, the really shitty percussion, not the Commodore 64 comparatively lush sounding percussion. Make it hard, make it a challenge sort of thing. Yeah. There's all these different things that you could do like that. So you got to try and think what's next. And I don't know. I've tried to theme my albums a little bit. I'm up to Bitpop 6, unimaginative title. Just put a number on the end of the genre, and then you have an album title. You know. So I'm doing Bitpop 6, and it's what I'm trying to do with this one is all those songs from the 80s that were, well, undeniably 80s, but also had some sort of unique quality to it. Like it was from a one-hit wonder, or maybe it was a bit of a novelty song, or it was like glam rock, or a little bit glitchy, or a little bit camp even. Just all those songs that are a bit offbeat, garish and gaudy and just unusual. I'm trying to pick out those songs from the 80s and do C64 based, and maybe 1 or 2 other sound chips yet. I don't know. I've done song number 3. I'm working on song number 3 at the moment, I should say. Which has just hit me. I was lacking inspiration. I released the first 2 songs off Bitpop 6, Christopher Cross's All Right, and God, I've forgotten what the other one is already. It seems like so long ago. I just published it last couple of days ago.
Yeah, I saw it. I saw it.
Yeah. Oh my God, why am I having a mental blank?
Because it's so early?
Probably. It must be that. So I'm working on number 3 at the moment, and it's another 80s song, a little bit glitzy, a little bit glamorous, and I was going to do it with Game Boy sounds, but then, no, I was working on another song, I should say, and it was going to be my first attempt at Game Boy sounds. I was just finished reading up on the data sheet for the CPU on the Game Boy to try and get some of the nuances of sound generation on that. It was actually the CPU that did the sound, not a sound chip. It was just integrated.
The set 80?
Yeah. That's right.
Yeah.
So I was working on a Game Boy one, and then this other song came along that just gave me a ton of inspiration, but it's definitely going to sound better if I use Commodore 64 sounds. So I've put the Game Boy sound set to one side again, and I've pulled out my C64 samples. I've started sampling some new ones out of my sound driver, because this new piece of music, it just begs to be done with the SID chip, no other chip. I wonder if that's going to be something that happens to me more often than not, because I have that affinity with the SID chip more so than the others, kind of thing. I'm more familiar with the SID chip, I suppose. But yeah, I really do want to try out different sound chips, like the YM chip in the Amstrad and MSX. While not as technically fantastic as the SID chip, still had an undeniably unique sound to it, and it's a part of time, it's part of history, it's a part of art, and I still want to pay homage to it too, because it's still important. Even if it's not the SID chip and sounds as technically advanced, it's still got that unique sound, which has got a quality to it that you just, it's a fantastic quality. It just from a listening sound engineering perspective, I suppose, it's just got this fantastic quality to it. It's how it does its waveform generation that I particularly find interesting, actually. And I want to play with those ideas and see what I can do with that.
What's your opinion about the differences of the two SID chips? I mean, for example, the later version in the C64-2, for example, can't really play digits, digital samples.
Yeah, the 8580 has much better filters than the original 6581. However, it also has better capacitors sitting between it and your audio out, which takes a lot of those pops out of volume changes, which is what you rely on for wave sample playback. So that's why you end up with the softer sounding samples. So it's a bit of give and take there, I guess. You get different filters. I'm reluctant to say that the filters on the 8580 are better. Maybe they're more technically accurate, but the 6581's original filters, with its wide range of variances between each individual SID chip, so if you want to talk about, again, emulation not being as accurate, just look at that filter.
Don't you mean the 6580?
What did I say?
I said something different, but I don't.
The 65, yeah. 6581.
Yeah.
Not 80. Yeah. Did I say different?
I'm not sure, but it didn't sound familiar. I was like, okay, maybe he's meaning something else.
Versus the other SID chip. Yeah. They all have their own qualities. I don't see one being as better than the other. It's all about how that individual chip sounds, I suppose. Really? And that's between major and minor revisions of that chip. They all sound different. They all have different qualities, and they're all pretty damn good. There's no. I don't think it sucks from a compatibility point of view. If you're talking about sample playback and stuff like that. But if you're writing particularly for a certain revision of filters or whatever, you can. It's great. It's just sucks when you're trying to play back and there's so many variances because you can't count for all those. Like I remember the filters in Martin Galway's Terra Cresta. On my original Commodore 64 that I owned, I could barely hear the lead instrument in that. The high notes are almost indistinguishable because my filter, you just couldn't hear it. My mate's C64 down the road, it sounded like a completely different piece of music. I listened to Terra Crash on that and it was like, holy shit, man, where did that sound come from? I don't remember hearing that on my machine, you know. It's awesome. So yeah, it sucks for playback, but it's great to have. It's still just a good thing in general. It's part of time and how that SID chip evolved, you know, and all revisions of it are good, sort of thing.
Interestingly, most composers back in the day didn't even know.
Well, yeah, it wasn't until later on that they became aware of it, you know. Yeah. They only knew about the sound chip that was in the C64 in front of them, pretty much. Yeah,
exactly.
The feedback one comes, and then you find out these things, and yeah. So there was a lot of people that had almost a missing sound channel half the time with that Terra Cresta music, the way the filters were set and how their SID was playing it back.
Interestingly, I was once doing an interview with Chris Crick, the sound manager from Epix. And he even didn't. Back in the day, he told me he even didn't know about the difference between NTSC and PAL, so that summer games, for example, would play too slow. You know, they didn't know. They didn't care. You know.
Yeah. The same is also true of the few games that came out of the Japanese market on the Commodore 64. There was actually a bit of production over there, but they were following the data sheet for the SID chip so closely. Bob Yans actually tells this story in this interview. They were following the spec sheet so close, and the spec sheet was not entirely accurate. That's the problem, I suppose. They were following the spec sheet more so than the nuances of the machine, and you ended up with half out-of-tune music because the frequencies were set wrong and stuff like that, you know. Yeah. And also, no one cared about, like you said, timing for the differences on a circuit level, even for the sound chip between PAL and NTSC and stuff like that. And speed of playback. Yeah. So you end up with like bootleg American games coming over here from an NTSC market, US games or something like that. We'd get a copy over here, and you know it plays back at the wrong speed. The whole game's fast. The music's wrong. You know, all that sort of stuff. It's bad with sampled music too, where you want really accurate timing, fine grained timing.
Yeah, it's interesting. When he said they didn't know. Ben asked him, "Why did you never fixed it?" You know, it's interesting. But there were some exceptions. For example, the NTSC version of World Games from Epix, which is a later game, actually crashes on a PAL machine.
Oh, does it?
Yeah, so because I bought the NTSC version from eBay in USA, and it crashes on my C64 PAL, but I'm fortunate enough to have an SX64 that is NTSC, and there it works perfectly.
I would pontificate that it must be setting some sort of non-maskable interrupt, and because of the timing differences, another interrupt is being triggered while an interrupt is already in process.
I'm not a programmer, so I have no idea. But I know that I came to the title screen, and then I went to the events, and the first event I tried, it crashed already. So I was like, okay, so no way I'm going to play that game on my PAL C64, you know. And the same happened to me with Rocket Ranger. For the NES, you know, if you play Rocket Ranger on the NES, it simply crashes when the game starts on a Palm machine, because I guess a timing issue. So
Yeah, it'd be some sort of interrupt collision by the sounds of it.
yeah, so that's something that's really something that is kind of sad. For example, as we mentioned at the beginning of the interview, that you have hardware to speed up. And it was interesting to see that Test Drive, for example, plays very good on a super CPU. Because it seems like the programmers made a limit of the frame rate, an upper limit, so it would never play too fast.
It's just that 6502 chip ran at barely 1 megahertz, and there's only so much processing that you can do, and 3D graphics is that's hard. It's a lot of maths involved. That's time consuming, all that vector math. So you can only achieve a pretty shitty frame rate at best on a 1 megahertz CPU. You put a super CPU in there, and what speed was that? 7 megahertz? 20. So that means you can do a lot more vector calculations in that time. Your frame rate goes up and it becomes playable, like you say. Another good example I could imagine would be, I used to play, you can do it with the Chameleon cartridge, but change the speed, but I haven't tried it. Maybe Sentinel, that game was awesome. That would be really good with a better frame rate, I reckon. But Test Drive's the prime example there, like you say. Yeah.
But most other games like Mercenary and so on, they play too fast because they never kept the top of the frame rate, so it goes endless.
Yeah, because you're dealing with, it's unlike computers now where your speed, your CPU speed will vary just for workload, for temperature, ACPI stuff, power saving. Back then, your CPU was a constant rate, one speed. That's it. Like even now, you got different screen dimensions that you got to cater for games and stuff like that as a programmer. But back then, you had 320 by 200 pixels. That was it. That's your lot in life. This is what you've been given. Deal with it. It was a constant because all the machines were the same. It was a homogeneous platform. So they didn't worry about setting upper limits because they relied on that constant for that game. But then these add-ons come along that expand the capabilities of the machine. Those constants no longer exist, and the game behavior will change. Obviously.
Yeah, that is why I was so surprised that it worked with a Test Drive. So I thought this was pretty much they thought a lot ahead. It seems. To actually limit the frame rate in 87,
Yeah, it would have been how they programmed it. They would have been working off a more recent sort of mentality where you time your frames. I don't know exactly how they would have been thinking about it. It's hard to actually even suppose that to some degree, but they must have been thinking about it not so much in vertical blank interrupts, but as just more CIA timing based and then just buffering frames as required, or so. I don't know how they did it, but yeah, their more techniques are more typical of today's programming than programming back then. You didn't worry about that sort of stuff then so much. You just relied on those constants. So they must have been a little bit ahead of their time. You're right, the way they thought about it. Or lucky.
I wonder, do you actually work as a coder in your real life? Because it sounds like it.
No, I'm not. I do work in IT though.
You do? Okay.
Yeah.
I thought so. Yeah.
Yeah. But I'm not I'm a senior manager, technology manager. I'm not technical anymore.
Okay.
But earlier this year, I did learn a little bit of C++. I studied C when I was a boy, but I learned a little bit of C++ earlier this year and wrote a little OpenGL engine type thing that can display. So I'm a nerd. What can I say?
Yeah.
Learn a bit of C++ in my spare time. Yeah. So I was always intrigued by the programming side, though, and I look at computing as science. I have to for my job. Computing is science. I deal with supercomputers, clusters, and stuff like that. It's no longer in the top 5. There's a list of top 500 supercomputers that have come out. The biggest is the top 500 supercomputers in the world. That comes out every 6 months. I managed, because it's fallen off the list now, but one of the clusters supercomputers I managed was on the top 500 supercomputer list worldwide.
Okay.
I deal with the big iron, I suppose, the big end of town sort of stuff, corporate IT sort of thing, all that mission critical systems and stuff like that. But I'm more about strategy and staff management and project management now than actually. I'm not I've done my time as a systems admin and network engineer and stuff like that and whatever.
So your hobby, in your hobby time, in your free time, you actually have your compensation there. As to say, you look more at code and do your music stuff.
Yeah, see. Because I don't get because I'm basically a businessman first, even though it's technology, but I don't deal so much with the technology, but the business side of the technology. In my spare time, that's when I get to be a bit of a programmer or a little bit of a musician, a bit of both at the same time, or one or the other.
Nice.
So, I live and breathe computers pretty much at work and in play, I suppose.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, I guess we covered it all. I have to say we spoke so much about everything.
Yeah, it's been a great chat. We have covered a lot of topics. How long have we been going at this now? 2 hours.
2 hours, yeah.
2 hours. If I make another cup of coffee, I'll be up for the third hour. Otherwise, I'm going back to bed.
So you don't have to go to work today?
Not today, no.
Oh, so you took the day off or something?
Yeah. Well, yes, actually.
Wow.
Why not? I'm learning about work-life balance at the moment.
I see. Well,
Yeah.
we mostly don't have the case that people take a day off to be interviewed by us. So.
Well, that's just a matter of convenience. I would have taken the day off anyway because I'm just lazy. And I got music to write. That's more important than my day job sometimes.
I see, and I understand.
I'm fortunate where I can do that. I count my blessings where I can do that. Take days off and work on my fanciful little Bitpop project.
Great. So before we end, actually, we have this kind of promo thing. You probably heard it in the podcast. Yes. Where we have this intro thing. So if you just could do your version, like, hello, I'm this and this, and I'm doing that and that, and you are listening to the Scene World podcast. That would be great.
What was the last bit of that?
Scene World podcast, it's called.
Scene
World.
Scene World. Okay, so my name is Gavin Graham. I am writing Bitpop music, and you're listening to the Scene World podcast.
Thank you. Great. Wonderful. Good. Yeah. So, I guess this will take a bit till we release it, because it's Christmas coming up soon. So I don't know when we will release it. Maybe in January or something.
I can imagine. Well, you mentioned that you don't do a lot of editing, but I can imagine that you'd want to, because I just
No,
ran.
no. But the thing is, I still have to release one video podcast first.
Yes.
So that I will do in the next days. So maybe we release it at the end of December. I don't know, but I will let you know.
It's all good, man. You do it when you can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But try to release as often as possible. Actually.
Yeah. I know. You have to, don't you?
If you don't mind, since how long do you actually follow us?
It's been pretty much about the same time I started doing Bitpop, or maybe about a month or two after that. Well, I haven't been doing this long, so it'd be June, July, or August, perhaps.
Wow. So you didn't listen or read a lot of stuff we released yet, or you're still working on catching up?
Not early stuff, no. But I've the recent stuff, yes.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe you should look at this Mega 65 that AJ mentioned, the Commodore 65.
Yeah, that sounds pretty cool.
That's quite interesting.
Yeah, that sounds pretty cool. Yeah. I suppose I can't remember if did they actually fully complete the specs, the data sheets for the C65? Did Commodore complete the data sheets?
No.
Or is something being made up as he goes along, sort of thing? To fill up the gaps.
Yeah, that is what they're actually doing. They reverse engineering and filling up the gaps.
Well, yeah, that's right, yeah, because you can reverse engineer to do, yeah, right. They've actually got machines that they can make reference from, yeah, of course.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you have enough C65s, you've got a complete machine that you can reference.
I'm not so sure if they I mean they never completed to 100% from what I read.
No, they didn't, did they? Yeah. That would have been a good machine. Hey, what do you know about the Acorn Archimedes? Just out of interest.
Not a lot. I know what it is, but
that's why I'm asking. I'm trying to figure out some more. How about just I've only just started looking at the Archimedes, and I'll tell you what, if it wasn't for their lack of marketing, I reckon it's a better Commodore Amiga than the Commodore Amiga is, if you know what I mean.
Okay, sure, yeah.
So you look at them spec-wise, Amiga versus Archimedes, and I'll tell you what, as a programmer, Archimedes would have been a dream machine to work on. I wish I owned one, but they just didn't exist out here.
Well, you can get one from eBay, can't you?
You could. I've got a mate that's got one. I don't think I'd invest in one now to learn to program it. That's the thing. I wish I had one back in the day, kind of thing, instead of an Amiga. At times I think, what would it have been like if I had one of those things? Because I tell you what,
this is how it is in life. At work, people always tell me, Commodore 64, Amiga, they were damn good times. And I'm saying, I'm still living it nowadays. I never sold my 64 stuff. I still have it from my childhood. I never sold the stuff. So.
Yeah. However, time's a lot more precious when you get older, and it's hard to invest time into these projects. Hey, trying to balance work with doing my music and stuff like that, or your hobbies. It just gets a bit harder.
It's true. Yes, we are doing more interviews than we are playing games on the C64. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. That's true. Yeah.
It's true.
Yeah.
Just for example, I'm getting an Australian C64 soon, so that's quite nice, You can get everything from eBay. You just have to be on eBay at the right time, because sometimes it's getting too crazy, too expensive,
What's the arcade machine you got in the background there?
That's actually that was actually once a Dutch poker machine.
Oh.
And a friend of mine is actually running an arcade museum, pinball in the arcade museum in Germany, and he got it for like 20 euros, and he said like, if you want, we can complete it. So this poker machine was only buttons, so we removed the buttons and put in joysticks.
Oh, nice.
So that was actually modified, so I can play all kind of all kind of JAMA games,
JAMA games, right? So you're actually using the boards, hey?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
I was going to be my question. Do you have MAME running inside that? If you're running actual
JAMA, and of course I have a collection of adapters, like shoplifter adapter, Pac-Man adapter, because the older boards before 85 didn't use JAMA, so.
Yeah.
So I have a couple of adapters. Yeah. Of course, there was not enough space for 6 buttons for Street Fighter, but so one button is actually a 3-in-1,
3-in-1.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Oh, okay.
So that you get enough space to have all 6 buttons, So 3 buttons are regular, and the other 3 are like a big round button, but parted in 3 parts.
Yeah, right.
For the special moves,
Yeah. Those JAMA boards, they're quite expensive, aren't they?
I know. It depends on the game, of course, I mean, a game like Tetris, you can get for 10 or 20 euros, but of course a game like Aliens or Shoplifter is kind of expensive,
Yeah.
I think my most expensive one was Aliens. That was like 190 euros or something. That was pretty expensive.
Oh, okay. So that's around about 400 Australian, I think.
I don't know Australian dollars.
300 to 400. So it's a bit of money just for a board, but
But I saw it in the museum, and I was like, I need to have this board. This is an awesome game.
Yeah.
The game is pretty small. You can play through within 20 minutes.
Yep. And also, you've got a proper CRT in there instead of an LCD too.
Yes, it's a proper CRT. It's actually a new one. Because another friend of mine living in Cologne had a new unused CRT.
Oh, right.
And he was planning to make his own arcade machine, but he didn't have the space in his flat to place one. So he said, okay, if you want, you can take the CRT.
Oh, cool.
So I got this one actually for free.
Oh, nice. So you got the actual cabinet for what? You said about 20 or 30 euro or something?
Yeah, exactly, 20.
And you got a CRT there.
Free,
You just played the controllers, and then you got the cost of your JAMA boards.
Yeah, so all in all, it would be around 270 euros, I guess. All in all, because you also need a different power supply and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Because
of course.
The poker machine power supply didn't have enough juice,
Yeah, it wouldn't have. Yeah. That's pretty cool. There's a place down the road that's manufacturing the cabinets. And more the tabletop version, I think, or both actually. And they're selling for, what would it be in your money? Probably about 600 euros. So these are complete, already made sort of things. But yeah, so about 600 euros roughly.
You mean new arcades?
I don't know what the internals are. They're certainly, new cabinets, cases.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure what the internals are, if they're jammers or if they're just some sort of, for all I know, it could be a Raspberry Pi.
Yes, I saw them in Germany too. You can actually buy them, yeah. New arcade cabinet, 600 euros, yeah.
Yeah, they are about that?
Yeah.
Right, yeah. Yeah, because he sells them for around about, they start about 1,000 Australian dollars, and that's about 600 euros, I believe.
That's actually pretty accurate, yeah.
Yeah.
I was actually in Japan in September, and they still have arcades over there, you know?
Really?
Yeah.
There's very few here, and even then they don't have like game machines like that. They're more like your skill-based games like ball and basket, and maybe you'll see the occasional Dance Revolution machine on the side, but they're more skill-based games than actual like video games now. Oh, except for where I live in Brisbane, there's a pub that's recently opened up called the Netherworld Arcade, and they've got old arcade machines and pinball machines. They've set up like an old arcade parlour.
Wow.
That we all remember, but it's a pub. And there's one or two other places. There's actually a little bit of a retro revival happening at the moment, I think, in that sort of aspect. Again, the whole demo scene thing's debatable. But as far as arcade games in venues go, there seems to be a bit of a revival happening right now. There's a few places dotted around Brisbane that are getting pinball machines back in and stuff like that, and some are actually set up like arcades. So that's interesting that that's all starting to occur.
But aren't most of them broken because they don't have anybody to repair them?
I don't know what they're doing for maintenance. You know, what these businesses are doing for maintenance. Like I said, there's a guy that's supplying, and like you've got over there selling them for 600 euros. So they must be doing maintenance on the machines they sell at least. So I guess they come with some sort of warranty. I don't know. I've actually not been in one of these places yet, the Netherworld Arcade or whatever. I've not yet gone to it. I've heard about it.
So you should, actually.
So I don't know if they're old machines that they bought, or if they're just new versions of, with jammer boards, or just like a MAME set up inside. I don't know what's inside them, I reckon.
Yeah, you're actually right. When I was in Japan, most arcades were like the same, like Super Mario Kart, arcade version, a Sonic CD.
Yeah.
Simply a PC put in an arcade cabinet,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of do-it-yourself projects where you just buy a $35 Raspberry Pi, you load MAME onto it, or Retro Arch is even a distribution you get that's all set up for you. You just put the SD card into your Raspberry Pi, it comes up with Retro Arch, and there's your emulators and stuff like that. Run it on your TV, you could run it in a cabinet like the one behind you if you like, and then start selling them to people, and that's what some people are doing.
That's true.
And that's all that the Mini NES is. I believe it's like something. It may not necessarily be a Raspberry Pi in it, but it's just a system on a chip, ARM chip.
It is actually, yeah.
It is a Raspberry Pi.
No, it's an ARM chip based system.
ARM chip,
yeah. With the Linux inside, yeah.
Yeah. And I guess that Mini C64 will be the same, hey? Probably just the ARM chip.
But don't know
about that one.
I have no idea. I mean, they are releasing it in April next year, so. But we interviewed that guy too.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Oh, you did. Actually, yeah, I remember that.
Yeah. Back in the day, it was still called Z64 with Darren Mailburn.
Yeah. There was just a prototype back then, wasn't it?
Exactly.
Yeah.
You listened to that, it seems.
Yeah, that's what I said, yeah. I caught up with that one.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've been slowly going backwards in time, catching up on things. When I need a break from music, I'm listening to. I'm checking things out, man. I've got a lot of catching up to do. Hey, give me a break.
Yeah, well, we should try not to be too fast releasing new stuff so you have enough time to catch up.
Yeah, true.
But we are getting a lot of mails from Australia lately. We got other people from Australia emailing us. So it seems for some reason now Australia is detecting us as a product.
I wonder what's going on there. Our retro scene is changing, like a little bit. Like Syntax recently happened. Brisbane's not been quite that lucky where I am, but last year there was a demo scene party up here. That was earlier this year, and it's planned again for next year. We have a small regular event called C64 Night that happens. Hang on, I just got to take over my charger. I'm running out of power.
No problem.
But yeah, just with the whole, it's debatable. I should take the charger over to the other side, actually, where the light is. That makes more sense. It's debatable whether the scene's dying or not, but it seems right here where I'm standing, at least in Brisbane, it seems to be kind of, well, it's certainly active, and it seems to be to some degree, a little bit hesitant to say it, but kind of thriving even, or growing, perhaps, would be better than thriving. So, but I don't know if that's indicative of worldwide or anything like that. It could just be a bit of an anomaly in itself. I don't know. I'd like to think that it's happening everywhere.
Well, the retro hype in Germany at least started like 10 years ago for us,
Yeah, right. And that's pretty popular, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. You guys have got it so good over there when it comes to the retro scene, I must say, because you don't have far to go to get from one to the other to go to events,
Depends. I mean, Berlin, for example, is 5 hours away from me. I wouldn't do that.
You wouldn't?
No. But many events are like one hour distance from me, so that is fine,
Yeah. Well, at a minimum, you'd have to go 1 hour here to get to the next capital city for the next event. But small population means a small scene. And then you're talking about a population that's not only small, but very spread out across a large land mass. So it's really hard to get people together in this country on a community level, on a scene level, because there's few of us and we're just not close together geographically. So it's got its own challenges here, I think. You guys have got a lot more population density, and just more people in general. So you should have a lot more choice when it comes to all the retro scene stuff. So I'm a little bit jealous. Yeah.
Well, I mean, you can always take the plane and fly to some event abroad.
Oh, if only I had an unlimited supply of money. That'd be good. You got to travel so far, and it costs so much from Australia, man. You detach from the world. Everyone's northern hemisphere. We're sitting down here lonely with New Zealand in the southern hemisphere, waving at you guys from afar. Don't forget us. Yeah. Yeah. So it's a 12-hour flight to get to Europe.
I know. Yes, you're pretty far.
I know. Yes. I do that trip often enough as it is.
You do actually? Okay.
Yeah, 3-4 times a year.
So you could combine it with a demo scene visit.
It's all scheduled around my work, though. That's the only problem, you know.
Take some holidays,
Yeah,
days,
well,
and add it to that.
that's what I do, but I normally add a week in at a time, and that gives me enough time to go to the Netherlands, and then I'm out of there again, back home. That's how
Something like that. Something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. It's just hard to schedule, to get the timing right. Unfortunately, work takes me when work takes me, when they need me, not when I need to go. When I want to go on a whim, it's on their schedule, sort of thing. So yeah.
I see.
Yeah.
I see.
Yeah.
So it's not hard to take a day off, but it's hard to actually go abroad and making your own plans there.
Well, it's different because a day off's a day off, but work pays for my travel. I don't pay for it. It's not only is it far, but it costs money to get a 12-hour flight. So you're looking at $1,500 each time or something like that return.
Wow. Okay.
So yeah, that'd be about €1,000 probably for a return ticket, roughly, something like that. Maybe a bit less, 900. I'm not sure. So yeah, it costs a bit of money to do that a couple of times a year, but work pays for it because I'm going over for work. Otherwise, I'd be broke if I was doing that out of my own pocket.
Have you ever been abroad for holiday then?
Prague?
Abroad. If you ever have been abroad for holiday, then.
Rarely.
Okay.
Sometimes, but not often.
I see.
Yeah, I've done a bit of travel around, holidaying around, but not so much in recent years. I've seen a lot of Europe. I've been to a lot of places over there. Spain. I've been to Sweden. I've been to Iceland. UK, of course, Netherlands, Germany, many times actually.
Interesting.
I've seen a lot of the US as well. I've not seen much of Asia, but I'm pretty well travelled.
Okay, so you have had your share of the world.
Definitely.
Okay.
Definitely. Yeah. I remember, I went chasing the Northern Lights in Iceland 2 nights in a row in the freezing cold. Didn't see them. The luck wasn't with me. Out on this windy peninsula where the wind was just made the cold feel even colder. It was cutting through me. I'm looking, where's these fucking lights? Fond memories of Berlin and Frankfurt and Hamburg. Been to all 3 of those multiple times. I love Germany. I've sung karaoke over in Germany before at a bar once or twice. Yeah, I'm well travelled. I just haven't been able to mix in retro events at the same time. That's all.
I see. Yeah, so maybe you should do that in the future, and mix it with retro events.
Yeah, because you guys, you have big events. We have tiny events, and you guys got big events for yours.
Isn't the Syntax a big one? I always had the feeling that the Syntax is a big one.
We're a country of 23 million people. How big can big be?
Okay, we have 81. Yeah, sure, that's a difference.
Yeah, and people can come from all around, sort of thing. Where it's a real effort for someone from Europe to come to an Australian demo party. So it's just locals. It's the same faces. Pretty much everyone that we go to, you don't see new people and stuff. We're 23 million people. You can't expect all that much from us.
I understand.
Yeah. With a lot of land space. That's the only difference. So even then, it makes it hard for us. like you can take the Netherlands and fit that into the state of Victoria here. We're comparable population-wise, but their country fits in one of our tiny states. Not even the big states, it fits into one of our tiny states. You've got just this great density, which means, well, must suck at times living on top of each other. We got a lot of space, we don't live on top of each other so much yet. It's getting more dense, so. But it means that just things are just so much further away when you want to get to them. Everything becomes a mission to get to.
I see.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's. I guess it's similar with the USA. When I was in the USA in 2009, you know, when people say we will quickly drive somewhere, you know, that quickly drive to somewhere means an hour at least.
I consider that an hour's drive just going up the road to get something almost.
Yeah. For us in Germany, quickly drive somewhere means like 15, 20 minutes, you know?
Well, in Germany, to quickly drive somewhere means go 200 kilometres an hour if your car can handle the speed.
Kind of, yeah, right.
Yeah, kind of.
Okay, so time for me to actually get something to eat and stuff. It's getting late for me, 10:30.
It'd be what, 11?
10:30 for me.
10:30. Yeah. No, I really appreciate both yours and AJ's time. Hey.
No problem. I mean, it was interesting, and I figured we never talked to somebody that has been around the scene so early, like 82, 83.
I know, I'm so old.
and this Bitpop is really interesting topic, you know.
Yeah, well, it's certainly a fun bit of exploration.
You know,
so, I'd like to see someone else actually do something with it, something innovative and new, unique, for sure. I'm going to keep plugging away in the meantime.
So thanks for contacting us and doing this interview. It was really great, and we will definitely keep in touch.
Yeah, let's do that. Absolutely. Thanks for having me. It's been a pleasure. It's also been an honor.
Oh, thank you. Yes, very nice to hear. We do our best.
Yeah, no, you keep up the good work, guys. You know, it's all a matter of just keeping a little bit of that computing history alive in one way or another. Whatever I'm doing is that, and whatever you guys are doing contributes to that too. What we're both doing is some sort of contribution back to, you know, that era of computing. So it's a valuable effort what you guys are doing. I really appreciate it, honestly.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah,
you're welcome.
All right. Oh, so sorry for cutting you short, but I really feel hungry now.
You're not cutting me short. You're going way too long, I think. So yeah, you need to go eat something now.
Okay. So see you then. Bye.
Ciao.
Okay, guys, that was it. I hope you liked it, and see you next time. Bye.